Hey everybody, Yankee here. Today I want to take a few minutes and address a question from a viewer. This viewer asked me, why can't they go as a U.S. citizen to any other state, and as long as they're not violating the laws in that state or any federal laws, why can't they just purchase a gun? And if that gun happens to be illegal in their state, if they take it back to their state, well, that's a crime, and that's between them and their state. Why is that not the way it is? Why does the government decide that you can't buy guns in another state? The federal government decide that and enforce that law, making you have to take it through an FFL in your state. Why is the federal government stepping in this case? How are they doing it, and why are they doing it? They don't do it with other things. I mean, if you come from Alabama to Washington, you can buy and smoke as much marijuana as you want here. Edibles, etc. It's legal. We have recreational marijuana. However, if you pack your suitcase full of it and take it back to Alabama, well, that's between you and your state. It's a crime there. But with guns, it's different. You cannot go to another state and buy something that's illegal in your state. And why is the federal government so invested in making sure that that's the case when they don't do it with other things? Well, it's all about control, and it's about removing your gun rights through death by 1,000 cuts. And the way they've been removing gun rights in this country, they know they can't do it on a huge scale on a federal government level, because there's too many people watching and too many people would scream, that violates the Second Amendment, and it'd be too easy to get the Supreme Court into it and all this other stuff. So they have to do it on smaller scales. They've been doing it on a state-by-state basis. Bloomberg made that very popular, to do it state by state. And that's what they've been doing for a while now. And every time that they make one state very restrictive, well, that's a certain percentage of the population whose gun rights they've taken away. They've made it very hard for these people to ever be a force that could overcome a tyrannical government or could even fight back. So they've made a victory there. They've weakened the ability of the country to fight back against a tyrannical government. If those people in those states could go across state lines and buy a gun that's illegal in their state, well, then those regulations are kind of moot, because a lot of people would do it and they wouldn't know who did it. So they would have a lot of problem maintaining that disarmament. And also, every time they manage to take a county, a state, or anything like that out of the gun pool, people who can't buy guns now, they limit the market and they hurt manufacturers. It's more likely they'll run gun shops out of business, distributors out of business, and eventually even the manufacturers out of business. So if you could still go across state lines and buy things, well, then that would keep the market alive for the manufacturers and make it harder to run them out of business. So they step in this case, using the interstate commerce law, or I should say abusing interstate commerce laws to say, well, since different states have different laws about guns, you have to go through your state if you buy them, because you can't go somewhere and buy something illegal there. However, you can go to other states and buy things that are illegal in your state in almost every other category. Fireworks, marijuana, etc. Prostitution even in one certain place. But you can't take it back home with you. Although I'm not sure how you would take prostitution back home with you. I guess you just have to take a prostitute home with you. And that you can actually do. Wouldn't recommend it, but you can do it. But getting back to topic here, it's all about maintaining control. It's all about maximizing that death by 1,000 cuts. Every time a state becomes restrictive, that's a win. That's a percentage of the population that is no longer able to fight back, and it's a percentage of the population that's no longer in the market for the manufacturers and the retailers. So that's why they do it. That's the whole point. It's to maintain their wins. If they won in California and won in Illinois and won in, New York, they can say, that's huge percentages of the populations we've disarmed. That's huge percentage of the population we've taken out of the market. But if those people have a bunch of freedom-minded people in their states and say, well, if I can't buy this here, I'm going to go to Ohio and buy it. Or I'm going to go to Oregon and buy it. And then I'll just store it away for if I ever need it. Because the government doing this makes me think I'm probably going to need it. Well, that defeats their whole plan there. You can't have death by 1,000 cuts if every one of those cuts gets treated as soon as it's inflicted. And being able to go someplace else and buy the items kind of treats the cut. So that's why they abuse the interstate commerce law. It's about control, and it's about slowly taking the rights away from everybody. Because even if they can just get the highest population centers in the United States, the most populated states, the ones that spend the most money on guns, if they can get those to where they're gradually whittling down to where you can't really get anything, well, how are manufacturers going to stay in business when 60% of the market's gone? And they can't sell, the states that still allow it don't have enough population to keep them in business. And they can't sell to tourists or anything else. So they're screwed. They're really taking away the market. They're taking away your opportunity to buy firearms. If no one's making them or retailing them because they don't have enough of a market, well, you might as well not have a right to buy them because they ain't there. And that's their goal. They want to disarm as many people as they can, as quickly as they can, for as long as they can, and they want to damage the market as badly as they can damage it, because that's a long-term solution. If you took away people's right to keep and bear firearms, well, in the long run, they might get that back. Maybe even in not that long a run, they might get it back in the right court cases go through, if the right court cases go through. So that's short-term sometimes. Long-term, however, though, is making sure Beretta doesn't exist in this country. They don't even have a distribution center here. Or making sure Smith & Wesson goes out of business. Or making sure Colt goes out of business and doesn't have any distribution in the U.S. That'd be a more long-term situation. Because they can make it really hard for anyone to get back into the market. They just have to create complicated red tape schemed FFL things like they do now anyway, and make it very hard for that market to ever come back. Plus, if Smith & Wesson, Colt, etc. went out of business in this country, who's got the money to restart these types of companies that would want to? The billionaires don't want to. They're the people that are behind most of this stuff because they're the ones most in danger, because the 1% can't stay in power unless the 99% are depowered, disarmed. So they're not going to start back up the industries that are challenging their power. Same thing with politicians. They're going to make it as hard as possible to start back up the businesses that are challenging their power. So that's why the federal government steps in and makes sure that you can only buy guns in your state. That way, if they can get your state off the market, your state off the table, you can't counter that. You can't weaken that by going somewhere else and getting what you need. That's the whole reason. It's all about control, and it's about slowly taking your gun rights away, like I said, by death by 1,000 cuts. If you had the right to go to another state, that would diminish that. And I agree that you should be able to go to another state and buy a gun. I don't agree, however, that some states should be able to ban some guns. You should be able to buy whatever you want, whenever you want, wherever you want. As long as there's a market for it and it's available, you should be able to buy it. And no state should be able to ban any of it. But in this case, the federal government has a vested interest in being able to pretend like they're anti-gun or pro-gun or whatever, but none of it really matter as long as what they're doing on state levels is what's affecting your rights. So they have to make sure that state level stuff really does prevent you from getting the stuff they don't want you to have. What they would normally do with a gun they purchased. Control over what you have. I got to do the first part first. I'm getting ahead of myself. This question was, why can't you, as a U.S., most legal scholars, even if they're a little on the left, goddamn, legal scholars, that's illegal in your state if it's legal in another. Fuck. And it's about removing your Second Amendment rights. I lost my place. Promote America that's only good for the 1%. So, goddamn, my mouth is so dry.